Welcome to the Minds on a Mission podcast, the podcast where we explore the journeys that challenge us, change us, and chart the best course for our best selves. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podbean, Buzzsprout. Now we're distributed to Amazon Music as well as Deezer and iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Samantha Bailey, an entrepreneur and content creator. Today's guest is the amazing John Carlson. I hope I'm saying that right.
You are. It's pretty simple and basic.
Yes. I know sometimes I overthink it. I hope I'm saying it right. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I usually tell people that my name is very common, so I'm like common folk.
I feel that too. My name is feel pretty common. Um, so for our viewers who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as you know, John Carlson, and in brief, for those that generally go through school, like public school systems and stuff, they usually have a good learning track that they're on. Mine was a little on the slower end, and it was by second grade that I actually got diagnosed what they termed a learning disability. I called it more of a learning difference just because the terminology messed with my head a little bit. So, and I didn't have like your typical categories. It wasn't like simple ADD, ADHD, dyslexia. It was none of those. And even I had a hard time explaining my category. So mine was based in what's called language comprehension. It really came down to my comprehension was just a little slower because I processed things more methodically. And so growing up, I always evolved more and more and more. So when you first meet me, unless I tell you straight out, you would have no clue that I even have one.
Right.
But as you get to know me more, you start to see it where it kind of gets drawn out. But the reason I bring that up is because as I went through my years and trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I want to do in the world? What am I doing with school? What am I doing as I'm working? Those things. That was a battle for me. And I had to really fight for that in multiple facets. But I came across the massage therapy world, and it intrigued me so much that when I went to study it, something I didn't realize while I was in massage school, and I didn't realize this till years later, is that part of the reason I went in there is because what I really tick with is it's the desire to learn what and how people think, or how people tick rather. Because as a younger boy, I was actually quite sensitive to those that were actually hurting. And so when they were hurting, I didn't even think about it. I gravitated right towards them. And many times they were able to share stuff because they started to realize that I was a safe space. And throughout the years, I've had that example come through. So I went to massage therapy school. I graduated in 2003. So I've been in it a little over 20 years. And in that time frame, I was introduced to the world of network marketing. And I had a very interesting path with that of learning what is this industry about and how do you make it work in a sense. And there was a lot of learning about what it means to network, what it means to learn how to build relationships. And as I went through, I came across a mentor who was actually mentored by the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, for 5 years. And so previous to that, he had other mentors that started him on the diamond and gemstone industry, the real estate industry. And he was always making at least $1 million or more in each industry. And he's got some of the famous background. That's a long story. I won't even go into that right now. But what he learned from Kiyosaki was more about that financial education language. And that's what we started to really learn. And in the makes of all of that, I'm still doing the massage therapy practice, but I shifted myself from doing like what you call traditional massage therapy to more of a psychology type, or what some people call it psychosomatic type of work, because I like to understand where is your world of foundation going for you. Like when you go back into that past realm, what's in your basically childhood that is holding you back because you're holding on to something so tight, and sometimes and many times you don't even know you're holding on to it. So it's a matter of helping them dig out the old pattern so that new pattern has the ability to come in because there's actually space for it. So that's where that life coaching side of things came in from the categories. And in all of that time frame, the phrasing, it was some version of this that came up where people were like, I have no idea why I just told you all of that, but I don't feel bad about telling you. I actually feel like it's a safe space. And I went, yep, you're on target. I mean, I've had people that in one place I was working in, the kind of beginning part of my massage career was, I could tell on her face, and this is that part of that thing that I did when I was younger. It's like her face was just, it was written all over her face. And so we were getting done with our shift that night. And I think I went by her and I just said, hey, when you're done with all that, come to my room for a second. And she was like, okay. So she came to my room, she sits down. And I'm like, no, stand up a second. And all I did was just embrace her in a hug. And I said, you just look like you need to cry. I don't need to know what's going on, but you look like you need to release something because it's heavy on you. And she was grateful for the aspect, but that's her example of that pickup that comes from me. Not everybody's willing to do all that, but, and some people will just sort of tell me, it's like, nah, I'm good. All right. I'm like, okay, cool. Just thought I'd reach out. So that plays into a lot of where not only have I taken my career, but it's also where I've been able to take business because it gives me a different listening ear because of all the other training that I've had to enhance that side of myself. So in short, from that long story was I went from traditional massage therapy into what's called craniosacral therapy. It's very gentle, hands-on form of body work that can go deeper with a very gentle touch. There's a long, drawn-out way of saying that, but that's kind of the basic rundown piece of it. And so I'm able to tap into things that deep tissue just doesn't touch. And in the midst of all that listening, I can also go to people and find out not only where they stuck on the emotional side, but I can actually, from the financial education that I've learned, I'm actually going to be able to go in and go, okay, where is their mindset at? And I could go down this rabbit hole, which we'll probably go down in a little bit. The word mindset always drove me nuts. I actually hated that word for the longest time. I always wanted to frame it as frame of mind. But then I learned more, not just definition wise, but I understood why the word mindset was so important. And that carried me through. I'm like, okay, now I get that. So massage therapy, the life coach, the network marketing, they all kind of blend into one and they all help each other out in a certain sense. So I can't remember if I missed anything, but that's about the short of it.
I love that. Oh, choked
I
on
get
my
that
words,
too.
like
You're not
speechless.
the only one.
What was that?
You said I get that little cut in the throat there too when I talk.
Yes,
I'm just like,
yes.
whoopsies, losing myself.
I love that. I mean, it's crazy too. You say it started in 2003. That was the year I was born. So
Oh,
like,
fun.
I'm like that long, within my lifespan is all this stuff, which is amazing. Yeah, and that was actually one of my first questions was what
Perfect.
drew you to massage therapy. I
Cover
love,
it all in one, right?
yeah. No, it's good. It's good. It's good to be able to like have your story like in, what I mean, like being able to present that in short, because that's like very unique. A lot of people struggle with that skill, and that's still something like I'm working on, but obviously I know with time that will come being able to like perfect my story. But yeah, that was awesome.
That took me a while to perfect. So it doesn't come right away. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to plug that thing in. There we go.
You're good.
But that took me a while to learn how to just roll things in. So it does take some time.
Awesome. So one of my questions I wrote down was, how does the skills and insights from massage therapy enhance your approach to life coaching?
Excellent question. So in craniosacral therapy, and I'm going to get this a little off because the story gets a little twisted in my head sometimes. So in craniosacral therapy, it first started off as just a basic manual therapy. And then it started off with one particular osteopath, and then this other osteopath, which I studied under, not like directly him, but the schooling that he started. And he studied, because he's such a researcher he passed away many years ago, but he studied, it's either 7 or 9 different paradigms of psychology and found a way to basically marry the two together. And because of that, he was able to bring in imagery and dialogue. Another way of putting that is imagery and conversation. So when people are going into that space of just deep therapeutics, and if it's more of that emotional base, we have technology. And what I mean by that is we have that dialogue, and it's very gentle, it's non-threatening, but it's a way for them to know that, okay, let's go into this space and let's find out what's here. So like something comes up emotionally, they'll say, oh, okay, well, tell me more about that. And as we use those types of phrasings, it gives the subconscious that ability to go, okay, let me process through all this, and what do we bring up? And part of the trick in there, and this happens for everybody, there's no respecter of this one, is it takes a little bit of trial to learn how to let the subconscious speak versus the conscious mind. Because our conscious mind is the logical side.
Right.
Our subconscious, for lack of better phrase, is more of the tissues talking. And when you actually have the tissues talking, the tissues have memory. So when you go into that memory, instead of, many of us know that phrasing mind body, right? Well, this flips those two words around. It's now body mind, because instead of going here and then letting all this catch up, you're starting here and then letting this catch up. So you're letting one area speak before another. That brings you to a deeper space in the therapeutic sense. So with all of that dialogue and imagery that we went into, plus another training, which I completely forgot to mention, is it gives us the ability to talk to a person from a standpoint that actually throws them off, and actually in a very therapeutic sense, because we can stand there and actually be in that space. Because one thing that's really big right now is that mindfulness piece. So by having this, I'm able to come into a conversation and ask questions that not a typical person would ask.
Right.
And I'm actually able to bring stuff out that a lot of times, kind of going back to that earlier phrasing, is, wow, either I never thought about it that way, or holy cow, I haven't thought about that in years. And they go, whoa. And then I'm able to help them kind of tie in things, so that way they're not left with this just like puddle
Right.
of how do I pick the pieces back up. I can give them something to go forward with, and they're like, wow, okay. And I've actually had some men that I've talked with, they're like, wow, that was really profound. I don't remember exactly what I said, but that's another reason why I went into the life coaching side of it, is because I wanted to be able to actually work with men specifically in the life side of things. Because we are someone where we hold a lot of stuff in. And it gets tricky to know who we can truly open up to. And that even gets messed with. So that's one of those pieces that I'm kind of helping that part of work out. So again, it's going back to it really helped me engage with people in just the non-typical fashion. And even when I'm doing like DMs or messages or texts, I can even do it through that. It's not the same energy experience,
Right.
but I can at least talk them through some things. And they're like, holy cow, what the? And they're a little bit surprised by that. So I don't know if that answered your question. I was kind of spinning around there. But...
No, you're good. That was beautiful and very powerful. I love everything that you said. It just makes me like think of like how much there is in the world and like how much there is to learn about, and like what you're sharing is not something that I really knew about. Um, but I definitely like what you're saying, like with men, like not feeling like they're able to share things and like how you really want to help with that. I think that's awesome. Yeah, that I'm the same way where when I explain things, I have so many sub thoughts, but I think the way you explained it did tie together. And that is great for the viewers to know a lot more about what you do, and especially if that's something that they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So yeah, um, that makes me think too, like what you're saying about like the body, like the experience of versus like using your conscious mind and then your body and then doing it the other way around. Like it made me think of last year when I went to an event, and there was so many things I did there that I've never done before, and it was a lot of like physical experiences, and it was like having that same thing but through massage therapy is amazing. Like I never even imagined that, you know what I mean, that you could create that experience, but in massage therapy, which I know there's so many other things too that's like, you know what I mean?
It's a different space that the mind goes to,
Right.
because the subconscious has this depth that it can be amazing and it can be scary all at the same time. In that scary piece, the interesting thing that the subconscious mind has the ability to do is it's not going to bring up something it's not ready to bring up. It will know when a practitioner or the person is ready for it. Because there are times when the body's ready to bring something up, but the person's conscious mind is like, no.
Right.
But there's that little inner battle, and that's where that dialogue piece really comes in handy, because then you can therapeutically guide them through that, not coach, because that can be different. Guiding them through it is more of that gentle approach of like, okay, how would you like this to look, depending on where you are with where they're at up here because of what they've tapped into in their body.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That's and yeah, I feel like there's so many people that have so many things that are like repressed, and that could be very helpful for people to work through those things. And that's why I wasn't trying to get off topic, but why I was mentioning the event I went to last year is because I felt like I had that similar experience where I had a lot of things that I just was repressing and like wasn't making prominent in my life, and things that I needed to work through, and then having those physical experiences at that event like helped me really realize what things I wanted to work on and
Mm-hmm.
like move forward through. So that I think that is very cool what you do, and it's very helpful for a lot of people.
In relation to just what you said there, part of what is experienced in that cell, in that part, is what endorphins can also do in respect to the subconscious and what you work through in your head, because people don't know what's going off in your head, but you know what's going on. So when you're going through that and you're working through it, you're in a therapeutic space in your body, even though you're just having plain out fun. You're just doing your own processing piece. So it's like an endorphin version of the kind of work that I do. So yeah, you're right on target.
Awesome. So another question I have, and I'm trying to like keep track with like what we're going through, like what questions already been answered. So
I get that.
the next one is can't speak. Parallel to your career in massage therapy, you've been involved in network marketing.
Mm-hmm.
How do these experiences complement each other?
Yeah, so in the network marketing world, something that people run into, I talked about that word mindset earlier. And what I learned in massage therapy helped me start to understand and sort of get more of that human psyche. So when people would be going through their stuff, you could start to see where they're stuck. In network marketing, when people are first seeing it, whether they're thinking it's some sort of pyramid scheme, scam or not, or they think it's an actual legit business, they're just like, I don't know about this right now. And, I'm this and that and the other thing. Many times they don't really see how sometimes they're truly stuck in their own way. And when they say they're open, but their actions say otherwise, then you realize, okay, what you mean by open is you're only open to the things you're actually open to, but you're not actually opened up to these other things because you've already got a conversation back here going on about it. So whether you hear a buzzword, a trigger word or not, you shut your ears off. And so that makes it difficult to have any type of forwarding conversation because their ears and their mind are elsewhere. You could be talking a whole bunch of stuff. And sometimes for myself, with knowing my background, I have that ability to spot it and go, okay, what's been your experience in that? And sometimes it's a matter of like, well, I haven't really been involved in it, but I've got family members who've been in it and, they lost their shirt, or I've had friends that were into it and, they did do pretty well, but then they left, and, all sorts of versions of that. And you're going, okay, so you haven't had the personal experience yourself then. And you're like, no, but I think I get the gist of it. I'm like, and then I go, okay, what do you think the gist of it is? And once in a while, their defenses go back up. And they're like, I don't know, and they'll start rattling off. And eventually you hear in the conversation, you're like, okay, well, if you are open to having a conversation at a later point, because it doesn't sound like this might be a time to have this type of conversation for you, maybe we can have it at a later point. And sometimes, not always, sometimes what will happen is they're like, why don't I just hear you out? Because you don't sound like you're actually trying to recruit me right now, or you're not trying to be a salesman or something. So let me hear what you got to say. Because what I did is I took it away gently. You're like, I don't actually need you for the business, but I can show you if you're open to that. Other people are just like, yeah, dude, this isn't for me. I wish you well. And we're like, okay, cool. And sometimes I get the contact information anyways, because, staying connected, there might be some commonalities that we had that were really good. Otherwise, it's, nah, man, I'm good. And then we just shake hands and be on our way. So when you're in that network marketing field, one thing that we do need to work with in the network marketing field is how to have some of those other tougher conversations. And some people get kind of lost in that. Other people, they know it real quick. They don't think about it too much. But in my world, I'm able to have slightly deeper conversation and help them see something else. I was just having a conversation earlier. We did get kind of political, which I was a little surprised by. But regardless of that, one of the guys, after the conversation kind of departed, one guy stayed there and we started talking like economy and workflow and taxes and stuff. And I asked him a question. I was like, okay, when people learn that financial education side of things, you can actually learn how to lower that tax realm. And he just like, yeah, man, that's totally what we need. I'm like, right. And I said, have you heard the term financial education before? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, what does it mean to you? And the typical type of answer came out. And what he thought it was the financial management side of things. I'm like, that's not actually financial education. I'm like, you're talking financial management, which are basics and they're the essentials. But when you look at financial education, especially from like a Robert Kiyosaki standpoint, and this can go further than just Kiyosaki himself, but he kind of coined it, is it's literally learning how to make money work for you. And you're like, oh, and all of a sudden the brain starts to freeze a little bit because it's almost a new concept. Even though they've probably heard some of it, it's still a new concept because they've never really evolved that conversation further than just maybe knowing the definition. So taking that massage therapy piece and having, feels like I'm going backwards with the way I'm faced, but either way, when you have that training under your belt of how to have those conversations, no matter which direction it goes, it helps you have a different listening ear. And here's what happens in the network marketing field that drives me a bit batty is, and I've actually done this myself, so I'm calling myself out on this too, is you go into sales mode like that. It's like you go into the jugular way faster than you anticipated. Because you feel like if I don't get this information out to them, if I don't tell them everything else out, if I don't lay the laundry list out, they're not going to know. Many people don't even need to know all that. If you sit back and have the ability to have that listening ear, which is what massage therapy and then the craniosacral therapy, what it really taught me to do is how to sit back and really listen. Because in the spaces of doing that therapeutic dialogue, there are times where you are sitting there, you've asked a question, but you can feel the tissue say, we'll answer you, but hang on a moment. Because the person's going into this therapeutic process. So sometimes you're waiting literally 5, 10, or even 20 or 30 minutes before the question gets answered. Now, once in a while, in those same sessions, sometimes you do have to re-ask it because you can feel the therapeutic sense has shifted a little bit and they just literally forgot what you asked. So sometimes you can re-ask it, but that's where training your touch is important. And your listening ear, because this listening goes beyond what you're hearing. It goes more about what you're feeling and what you're sensing. So it depends on where you're connected on that end. So having that massage therapy and the craniosacral therapy dialogue has helped me go forward into, okay, how do I need to go about approaching this person? Because whether their body language is saying one thing or their words are saying something, it's like you have to find that match. And there's something that I remember Tony Robbins had talked about a while back, which is sometimes you want to match their tone. This isn't always the best way to go because sometimes they're super aggressive, so you have to pay attention to that.
Right.
But with that is if you match their tone, every once in a while they'll start to recognize either what they're doing or they're like, oh my gosh, you're talking the way I am. It's like we can actually have a conversation here because we're matching energies. What they don't always know is, well, I'm actually controlling the conversation more than you think because I'm matching it, because I'm trying to help you understand that you can actually come down a little bit or help you out for whatever situation you're going through. There's something else I wanted to say, and I'm completely blanking on it, but that's kind of a good gist of it.
Yeah. Well, I had some thoughts during that. I was just trying. I know.
I can imagine.
I was like, wait, don't forget what I was gonna think. Yeah, I definitely think like what you're saying is that, and like this is something I've learned because I started taking like a sales course and trying to understand the world of it. And now like when I talk to people like for different opportunities I'm looking into, I notice things more clearly because now like I've taken, you know what I mean, I've learned about it. So I'm like, okay, so like what you're saying is like I feel more prone to hear more about things when I feel like the person actually cares about me, and it's how they're talking. Obviously, like you saying, it's like obviously that is on purpose, but it's still like when someone's more personable and they take the time to ask you the questions, and it's not just like you said, like sale, like you could tell it's like they just want the sale. I noticed that does a lot better. I mean, obviously so many people, that's what they'd prefer, because
Mhm.
it's like, why would you do business with someone when it doesn't feel like they actually care, like they just want the sale, you know what I mean? So I mean, that makes like a lot of sense with what you're saying. um but obviously everything, like how you said, how it ties together, um is really cool. And I think it's interesting that these different areas in your life kind of make this perfect like puzzle piece, or like puzzle,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like it just goes together so well.
It does, and it's, you know, sometimes those sales conversations, the trust, sometimes trust can be picked up like that. Other times, it takes a little bit. The ones that happen quick, those are generally a smaller population. The bigger population needs a little more time.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen myself be one of those people where it's like, oh yeah, I don't know, and just like back and forth, like, kind of skeptical. And I'm very much like an analyzer. Like I'm like every little thing. I'm like, how are you speaking to me? What questions are you
Uh
asking
huh.
me? Like, and that makes it harder for people, because I'm like, I'm not a person who would be an easy sell. I'm analyzing how many times you've texted me, when you texted me, like
Mm-hmm.
all everything, because that's just me. But
Yeah, no, it's there's actually a good author that I've got to reread his book again because he has some really good content in there, but there's some phrasing in there that I really appreciated about him. There's a guy named Chris Voss, and he has a book called Never Split the Difference because he was a hostage negotiator for, I think it was the either CIA or FBI, I forget which. But there's a question that has 3 to 4 different beginnings where you can go into, and you can be doing this in conversation. I can even explain it to people and I can still do it and it will still work. So you go into, wow, that sounds like it was a lot of fun, or seems like you're having a rough day, or this looks like it could be tricky. But I'm starting it off with this: looks, sounds, seems. There's another one, and I'm blanking on it right now. But when you start it off that way, it brings the directness into a bit of a softness. So that way that you don't feel like either you're being attacked or just being jumped on one way or the other, because most people are just like, let's just shoot it straight. And there are times when you definitely can do that. But when you do that, I'll do it plenty of times in messages and I'll get some pretty decent responses off of it. And that phrasing itself can actually take you pretty far in a conversation.
you saying that makes me think about how I unintentionally do that, not on purpose, but I have noticed in these podcasts a lot of the time my response leading to my thoughts is something like sounds, or you know what I mean, which is
Mm-hmm.
not on purpose. But I think, like you're saying, it can be a good segue, especially for me. Like it gives me a second to kind of collect my thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously we're sharing a lot, so I just unintentionally do that. But that's interesting, and that makes sense, because I've noticed other people do that as well,
Mm-hmm.
which I never thought that was a planned out thing. But now, like, I'm continually learning. Like there's so many things in conversations that are like you said, controlled, like for, you know what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you a path without even realizing you're going on a path sometimes.
Right.
And then sometimes you know the path, but it's like you can see this resistance. You're trying to find your way, and those can actually it's like a prefix in a sentence. I'm using the word wrong, but it's like it gives you a little bit of a good segue, And also you're like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And it goes back into that phrasing of, tell me more about that. It's like an inviting way of, hey, I'd love to hear more.
Right. Well, too, I mean, I think that when you're having a conversation with someone, I I personally think it can be rude to not do that, especially because a lot of times, like in it's something I've worked on a lot is listening and trying to be better with that. Because I'm a rambler. I could talk forever, but but so I work so hard on that, on letting the other person feel open, because I'm like, I know I can share a lot, but I genuinely want to hear more about you. So it's just, again, another thing I unintentionally do.
For us ramblers, we almost have to sometimes physically go like this just so our ears will turn back on. We're easy to go down whatever the weeds may take us. And then it's getting us to go, okay, let's ramp this back up. And sometimes it's re-asking a question to re-engage them, and then just going, whoop.
Yes. I have to do that too, because like when I'm I'll have so many things. I'm like, oh, I want to ask this, or I want to say this, and then I'm like, quiet in my I'm like, I need, you know what I mean. But I think that can be a good thing in the sense of like we're super excited to talk to people and get to
Mm-hmm.
know people, but sometimes it's like, no, it's not your time to speak. You know what I mean? Like we're back in school. Not your time. Wait till you
Mm-hmm.
raise your hand.
It's getting comfortable with awkward silence. And yeah, that's taken me a while, where it's like you want to fill the space with something. And so, one thing I'm going to state here, and this is just, it's a tiny little speck of it. Um, I also do school bus driving for right now. And one of the things in there is that we're doing air brake tests. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to watch for the air brakes, whether they're going to be losing some air or gaining some air. So we have to watch those. Most of the time, it's the losing of air, but we have to sit there and wait for a good minute. And it's like, most of the time, it's just like either silence. You might have the radio on, but you're not doing anything physically. You're just waiting. You're almost counting. And it's a weird space to be in. And when I had to do the test, there wasn't any talking during that. So you have to feel that space. Because when you are talking with, whether it's a client, a new prospect, a new interviewee, or interviewer, sometimes sitting back and waiting is the best place to go. So to go into the idea of the sales realm, when you ask a question about, okay, how would you like to move forward with that? And you zip it shut, the first person who speaks loses. So your whole goal is to make sure that they say the next words. And the longer you stay quiet, the more they're processing stuff up here. And then once they speak up, you know where to move forward with.
That makes sense. I learning more every day. And that, yeah, that makes me think, like what I was saying earlier is that when I've talked with people regarding like different opportunities, and they've been pushy like nonstop, and then like hello, and like I know I'm like immediately want to run away. And I know that's a lot of people's reaction, because
Yeah.
it's like you're saying, it's like I want to be allowed the time to think about it and weigh my options and not feel pressure to do anything. The few times I've put myself in that situation, it didn't end well. And so I know a lot of people have that same thing of like, I've been burned before, so I don't want to be in that situation again. So it's just like you said, if you're that salesperson, finding a way to be able to, like you said, let the other person speak and just wait, which I know can be hard, especially like if you're starting out. I don't have sales experience in that, but I, from learning about it, it's like I know starting out, it's like you want to make the sale, and you want, you know what I mean? And it's hard to kind of be like, slow down, everything will happen, but you have to just let the other person speak.
You know, it's interesting. It brings me back to a phrase. If you want to speed up, you need to slow down. But if you want to slow down, you have to speed up. And that's actually a thing that I learned when I was learning partner dancing. Certain techniques, certain moves. In order to make the fast part work, you had to slow down because you needed to prep for it. But when you're going fast with something and you want to go slow, you have to do something real quick and then hit that pause point and then allow it to just sink back into where it needs to go. So you'll get further by letting the stretch happen, which is the slow. And you'll go a slightly shorter distance when you're just powering something through.
Right.
So again, it goes back to, if you want to speed up, slow down. But if you also want to slow down, you might have to speed up for a second.
Right. You said partner dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask about that, but quick, hat sub that, because
Yep.
I know myself and I'm gonna forget about it. But I used to be obsessed with learning TikTok dances, and with what you're saying is the really fast ones, you have to slow it down. And so I would do that, and that like you said, like makes a lot of sense, because it's like it's too super fast. How do you expect to watch it and then learn it instantly? You have to like slow it down, break it up into sections. So that's what I used to do. But I would like to know more about partner dancing and what you got you into that.
So, how do I put that in a short snap? um, you know, at first it was a social outlet. Um, I was very heavily involved growing up in martial arts. So much so that I was competing very heavily, and I was gone 1 week in a month to a different state competing. And when that's slowed down slash stopped, I was trying to, I wouldn't say I was trying, but I was in a gentle seek of what is the next thing for myself? Where can I plant myself? Because I was trying to do the whole club scene. That got old really fast. I mean, I did it for a couple of years, but after a while, I was like, this is not what I have in mind. And it was getting me into a crowd where I'm like, this is not my flavor. And I remember when I was going to a community college here in my town that they had this, I think it was either a swing or a salsa dance. I forget which. And I brought a good friend with me at the time, and I really enjoyed the stuff. And then later on, as time went on, I actually found a dance school to go to. And I started off with the one dance, I think it was East Coast. And that's where you kind of get like the jump, jive, and wail type of music. But then I found salsa. And by learning salsa, it was just a new way of connecting with somebody. And you are all there for a common purpose. And by learning, it's like, okay, I get to be able to have this social piece. I get to connect with somebody. And especially in the beginning when you feel like you have literally two left feet. Learning those pieces and knowing that I had that methodical process in my brain, I could not find the one in the music for the life of me. Fast forward a few years, I end up becoming a teacher. Because not only did I find the one, but I've been able to find the two, the three, the four. I've been able to find all those, but it took a lot of work. So when I was learning to dance, I had to fight through the battles of how I processed and not feeling like I'm slowing everybody down. which was, you could call it an insecurity. I don't know, I was just working through stuff. But then when I went into the teaching aspect, now I had to understand what it meant to break it all down. So I went from like going like, okay, here we go. And I had to actually slow back down and go, okay, how do these things go together so people can pick it up and just go out and social dance? Because there's some dances, one of my favorite dances right now, I would not call in the beginning of your social dance, but once you learn it, it is highly social. I actually went to a few competitions with it, and that was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, that's a weird thought. Hold on a second. So the partner dancing, one thing it showed me is just how important gentleness is. So we'll take salsa, for instance. There's a follower and then there's a leader. For the leader, we have to understand what it means to actually lead the follower. And the follower has to learn how to respond to that. As a leader, we don't always know how much energy or strength we're giving something. And so we'll give it too much in the beginning because we're used to having that strength and that power. When I started teaching, I had to learn the different aspects of what areas of my body is actually doing the leading. And the ironic thing that took a lot of time for my brain to wrap around is most of the times it wasn't even my arms doing the leading. My arms had to do actions, but what was really doing the leading was my upper core. And so the way I positioned and rotated and moved that dictated how it felt here. And I actually had a couple people say, it's like, hey, it actually feels like you're about to rip my arm off. Now, was that my intention? By no means. But I had to start getting myself to, I would actually thank them, like, thank you for telling me that so I know how to improve it. And one person was actually scared to tell me. And once they said, I'm like, thank you, I want to know how to improve this. And I actually went to the instructor right after class going, hey, I was brought this to me. I want to understand what it is that I'm doing. And I was able to correct something in there. And there's still improvements that are going to go on. How I actually had to calm my frame down in order to make this move be more effective. And the follower would say, hey, I can feel you better now. So the tougher I was, the less the follower could follow me. But the gentler I was actually gave me more strength, and it allowed the follower to go, hey, I know where you're taking me now. Because I had to sit back and allow myself to calm. So in salsa, there is a move where we're getting the follower to do a turn. It's called a right turn in salsa. Well, I was pushing a bit too much with my arm. And eventually I got to the point where I was just using my body and I didn't do much. This was like a statue arm almost. And I would just rotate it and send it versus push. So even the words can have a different intention behind them. So I sent, and I had actually a couple followers that went, oh my gosh, that feels so much better. I was like, wow. And so from the massage therapy, knowing what I was doing, from even the network marketing standpoint of knowing what I was doing, to going into the dance world and going, wow. And this, it still trips my brain up once in a while. But it's like, I have to go back to simplicity. When you go back to that simplicity, you realize you don't have to do too much to get the message across. You don't have to have this elaborate story. You don't have to have all the science. You don't have to have this huge monologue for a sales thing to happen. When you get down to the bare bones of it, then you're able to create something magical. And if somebody needs something more, magically, they'll ask. And if they don't, then they're just dealing with their own insecurities about it. But it taught me more about gentleness and how to bring my center back so I wouldn't overwhelm my follower.
That it's so crazy throughout this whole conversation to hear how much, and just in life, how much different things just connect so well. Like with you, what you're saying is like these different experiences, the partner dancing, the network marketing, and the massage therapy, life coaching, all of it, that how you learn different things, and it made it all flow so much better. Like, and that's really cool. And I feel like a lot of people, like what you said about simplicity, like need to hear that. Even myself, because I struggle a lot with overcomplicating things. And yes. And it's like just remembering that it doesn't have to be that complicated. And I've been working on that because I'm like, I get way into it and being like, I need to know every single detail. And it's like, just let things play out and, like, stick to what works. So I appreciate you sharing that. It made me think, with all this stuff, what are you currently still doing? Like, are you still doing massage therapy? What are you working on right now? Like, are you still doing the partner dancing, being a teacher?
Yeah, great question. So I do the massage therapy bit. I'm not your rub lotion dude. I stopped doing that a long time ago
What was
because
that?
I'm not your rub lotion type of
Okay,
massage therapist. I
right.
stopped doing that a long time ago because after a while I started realizing that yes, manipulating the muscles, it really does have a therapeutic piece to it. I'm just like, not much my bag anymore. And every once in a while, it's warranted in a session, but I won't want it the whole session. So what I really enjoy is that craniosacral therapy piece where I can actually sit with the tissues or sit with the psychosomatic. Um, and right now, it's a smaller practice, which I'm actually okay with because of what's happening in the sessions. There's an interesting energy exchange, not to mention making sure that where I'm at is grounded enough so the other person's energy can come through and not feel so bombarded in a sense. Um, I haven't done the dancing thing in a few years. I actually put a pause on that. Um, and there's potentially an opportunity for a little bit of teaching, but it's mainly just to help an event out that might happen for my daughter's school, but that's about it. Going back to teaching on that, not so sure about that. One of the things that I wouldn't say, it's a requirement to a degree, not fully, but there's a chunk of it, is that choreography is a big thing within dance. And that is not where my creative outlet comes in. I don't have the natural ability to choreograph. I'm okay with that. I could totally learn. I'm not saying that it's not something I would ever want to learn. It's more just, it would just take a lot of effort to learn that type of thing. And I'm just not in the space for that. But right now I am building my network marketing business, and that's kind of been more of a focus. And I'm working on getting some more online tools, working out with that one. So those are pieces that I am in the current process of working at, along with a bit of the life coaching that allows to kind of have that segue a bit. Um, that one I have to kind of rethink how I'm approaching it, because I've learned a little bit on some of my approach hasn't worked out very well. So now I'm like, okay, I've got to rethink that. And that's one of the processes that I'm working through currently with it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering that because I know we've talked about different things that you've done in your life, so I just was curious what things you were still doing. Um, and I know we're kind of nearing time, but I have one more question.
Absolutely.
Out of everything that you've learned in your life, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to somebody?
Very, very good question. This is something that I've conjured up, and I think I've heard it from various people, not necessarily directed at me, but in various fashions. Is this goes for whether, no matter where you are in your world and whoever you've been with, whoever the case is, or whatever the case is. And I actually, now I just remembered, I just ticked back, is I heard this from an actor from Fast and the Furious. He had a YouTube channel, and he still does. He's getting a little wacko right now, but a guy named Tyrese Gibson, he had a video on, and it was a bit of a strong one, but his statement fascinated me. And I was just in the right mindset to hear it. And I went, oh, okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. And I actually say this to other people because it makes such a big difference, which is find your happiness independent of anybody else, friend, family, or stranger, period. If you find your own happiness, the people that come into your life should complement that, not take it away.
I love that. And that is very true. Like, and it's actually something I kind of was talking about with my fiance recently, is that like, because we like to talk about random stuff like, oh, if this happened or whatever. And we were talking about like, if we had all the money in the world, like, would it fix things? And I'm like, no, because as much as money is amazing, like, you have to be secured with yourself, and nothing else could replace that. You know what I mean? Like, you could have money, you could have all these things, but if you're not secured with yourself and happy with yourself, then nothing else matters, because it's like, that is probably one of the most important things in life, is to find that true happiness, which I know can be so hard, and I've worked a lot on that. But I feel like I'm in a place where I feel secure in myself, and with what you're saying, and to anyone who needed to hear that, that is really important. And if you think, oh, I wish I had this, I wish all of these things, focus on that. Focus on being secure in yourself, and just being able to give yourself grace and
Yes.
accept that not every day is going to be the same. You're going to have all these ups and downs, and just learning to adapt, and continually having grace, and just remembering that things come and go, but you will always have yourself.
That grace word is probably one of the more crucial words you just said. I mean, I know of a little bit of your journey, and I know you've been working through a lot of stuff. And when I state that independent peace that you want to find within yourself, for me, that grounding is where Jesus Christ comes in. And without that peace for me, I would crumble, because I find my hope, my joy, my satisfaction, my peace in Him. And when I connect with Him every morning and every evening, it sets me up properly in the day. When I don't, it starts to get chaotic pretty darn fast.
Right.
And so I have to remember to bring that center back. Even if I'm saying a very quick prayer, it can happen real quick. But I keep that grounding in Him. And that's where I'm able to put my strength, put my hope, put the armor on, and find that, knowing that that grace is there, I can give myself that grace because it's not just coming from me.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that. Um and that's I don't like to really talk about religion. I know a lot of people don't do well with that subject, but yeah, I've had a long journey, and I've um kind of come to that where I am more leaning Christian. I used to be agnostic, but um yeah, that's definitely something I'm working on, and that's why, like, how I phrased it is just, I know right now I still have a lot to work on, and well, I mean, life is continuous growth, but
Yes.
with my journey with God. So that's why I just kind of was like, if anyone's in a similar state of just, solidifying, okay, maybe right now I'm not where I want to be with God, but I need
Mm-hmm.
to at least find a way to be secure in myself and work on that relationship. Or if you're in a different religion, work on, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I accept everybody. So,
Yeah.
but yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And just in line with all of that, that's where my journey lies. But it goes back to that simple statement of find your own independent happiness.
Yes.
Because whether it's a partner in life, whether it's a friendship, or whether it's family, if your happiness lies in any other individual and that goes away, you will crumble to pieces. I'm not saying that sadness, depression, melancholy, all that stuff won't hit no matter what a person who you lose, even if you have the independent happiness. But when you have the independent happiness and that stuff happens, you have a little bit more security to pick yourself up from than you would otherwise. So that independence piece for yourself makes that big of a difference, whether you're a Christ follower or not.
Yes. I agree. I agree. That was very well said. Um, I definitely agree with what you're saying with in your bio that you gave me, of feeling like so comfortable to talk with you, which I appreciate, because I'm still working out the kinks with this and trying to get better. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
helpful to have someone like you who is very easy to talk to. I really appreciate that.
I
Um,
appreciate the words back.
well, thank you. So I know we're over the hour mark. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we?
Um, I think most of it has been said. Um, you know, we have a world that's chaotic, but back to that fundamental happiness. If you can keep that in place, no matter what's going on around you, you can come back to that grounding space. And if you don't have that, start reading, start listening, and start paying attention to who you're hanging around. Because input, what you see, what you hear, and who you're around play a major, major role in how that gets pieced together. If you are always around the negative ninnies, that's all you're going to be thinking about. Per example, and this is very quick, as a bus driver, I was at one of the bus stops. One driver come up through, he asked me a question, and I heard the negativity coming out. And I just sat there and I answered his question, but yep, I did. And he just kind of sat there and just shook his head. And I knew what was going on. He made some mouthy comment or whatever. And I was kind of like, okay. But I could let that be. Before, I've been like, wow, did I say something wrong? I would get in my head like crazy. But I have been changing my input for the last 10 years, and more specifically the last 6 years, because of the mentor that I've had. And so because of all that input coming in, I've had that time to rewire the brain. And that's possible. But you got to pay attention to what you're putting in, just like what you're eating. You got to pay attention to what you're listening to, what you're reading, and who you're hanging around. There's another thing in there, and I just can't remember it. But the input makes a really big difference in how you're building your financial happiness and independence apart from anybody else.
Yes. And I had a couple sub thoughts before we
Yep,
wrap
I
up.
kind of figured that'd be the case.
Yeah, so you're learning. No, I'm just kidding. You already know I'm a talker. Yes, what you were saying with the people you surround yourself with, that made me think of The Circle of Five by John C. Maxwell.
Yes.
Where the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most are who you're going to be like. So that's definitely something to think about, and something I've thought a lot about and think about daily, especially in friendships, is checking yourself. And a thing, little tangent, but short, but a thing that I've had to work on is realizing, like, you can still love someone and realize that you need to have boundaries, and that you may have to separate from someone even though you love them, because it's best for your mental health and for your growth. And that is something that I've really had to do, especially the last few months. I had an 8-year-long friendship that I finally ended. I had been on and off, like, I don't know, and finally was like, the fact that I'm even consistently thinking about these things, of thinking that this person is not good for my growth, and that maybe they're just not at the same place in life, and they still have some things they need to work through, that me where I'm at, I'm just personally not willing to wait, because I feel like it's stunting my growth and my potential. If you're in a similar situation, I'm going to be very blunt. You probably should end that friendship. Now, doesn't have to be forever, but at least until you see things change. Or even then, if you decide to go back to that person, have boundaries. Keep boundaries for yourself. Do not let yourself go back just because you love someone. At the end of the day, people who really care will know why you're doing these things. So that was my thought in that. And then I think I forgot the other thing. So
yeah, I'll just say 2 things. They're very quick. Whoa, I'm doing different things on the camera here. So 1, you can love from a distance.
Yes.
And 2, had the thought there, you can outgrow people.
Yes. And that is okay. It is okay to outgrow people. There's nothing wrong with that. And you're going to do that several, probably hundreds of times, especially if you're an entrepreneur, hundreds of times.
Oh, yeah.
Will
Especially in the entrepreneur world.
Yes. And at first, especially, it will be hard. And you're going to feel like you're hurting people and that you shouldn't do these things. But like I said, if you notice that you're constantly having those thoughts where you're in your personal growth journey and you realize, maybe I should separate from this person or this experience, anything, then that is a sign that you at least need a break and need time to recoup your thoughts. And if you notice during that time that you have been a lot better mentally and you've had a lot of growth, maybe that's a sign that that's just meant to be.
Yeah.
My personal thoughts.
No, that's good. I like it.
Thank you. So yeah, I know we've been rambling. To wrap up, could you let everyone know where they could find you, on what social media websites, if you have your own website, everything?
Yeah, so I've got a few places, obviously here on Facebook. I believe that's my handle is got kind of a little strange, but it's john.carlson.1800, I believe. I have some other pages, but I'm still kind of working those things out. And then I've got an Instagram, which is I think John A. Carlson 1280. We'll get those kind of in the bottom part of this in the comments.
Yes.
And then I have a TikTok, which I believe is also John A. Carlson at 12 or John A. Carlson 1280. A is just a middle initial. I think there's a few other ones. Like I have a YouTube called Breakthrough Nation, and I'm still kind of revamping some of my content, but those are a few places that I post kind of regularly. I do have postings on LinkedIn. I just don't post there as much as I used to. And I cannot remember which one that is. You can probably look me on the name, but I'll have to put that handle down below.
We'll get that figured out.
Yep.
Okay. And then mine, if you are watching the video and not listening to the audio version, you could probably seen it on the banner this whole time. But I have now been distributed to a couple more places. So yeah, we're Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podbean, Buzzsprout, and then now Amazon Music, Deezer, and iHeartRadio. And then for my personal links, you can just look up Samantha Bailey on Facebook and you'll hopefully find me. I'll have all my stuff linked too, but there's so many Samantha Bailey, so I don't want that to be stressful. And then on Instagram and TikTok, I believe it's Sam B Daily Motivation. And then LinkedIn, I don't know what the usernames for that. So I'll have all that link. I'll have my Linktree, and then I'll have John Carlson's links below. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on this episode. I had lots of fun. I know that we could probably talk for at least 3 more hours, but
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. This was a lot of fun, and I love being one of your first coming on. So I appreciate you having me on.
of course, and it's Friday the 13th.
I know, the spooky day.
It's a spooky day. It's a celestial event, so that's lots of fun. So I appreciate you coming on, and maybe down the line, if you have more updates, like 6 months from now, I would love to have you come back on and share more about that, more about what you're doing. So
Absolutely.
of course. Well, we thank you guys for coming on tonight, and I will see you on Monday with Hayden DeVoe, which I hope that's how I say his name. I'm going to start asking people how to pronounce their name in my list of questions because I don't want to butcher anybody's names. But yes, we thank you for coming on, and we say goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, have a good night.